right, everyone, we are back in the world of MyndShare, and quite honestly, we're going to be here for a while. In this series of videos, we're going to start with the first video. It's all going to be about the math tools with your MyndShare application. Once we open up MyndShare, it's going to, by default, go to the standard set of tools, which we went over in a prior video. What you're going to want to do is click on that toolbar where it says Standard Tools, and you're going to have a series of options that come up: math, literacy, geography, science, and voting. So in these videos that we have, the next maybe 4 or 5 videos, we're going to take a look at the math tools. So that brings up your math toolbar. At the very top of the toolbar, you have some standard tools. Those standard tools we went over in the last video. Those will be common for all of these toolbars. Those are your most common tools, like the eraser tool, the pencil, and then your select tool. So the first thing we're going to take a look at, I'm going to show you 2 different options on this math toolbar at the same time. And they are the top 2 options. One is called symbols and the other one is called numbers. I find that these 2 tools work very well when you use them together. Basically, I'll use these if I want to create a math problem on the IFP. I can actually drag the numbers up to the screen. And I can also drag the math operations and the symbols up to the screen. So I can create a problem, 1 plus 4, and then if I drag the equals sign over, and then it creates this problem on the board, and I can have a student solve for it. If I hit the question mark, it'll actually solve that problem for me. Or, once we get these hooked up to the wireless network, one of the great features about this is this square with an arrow pointing to the top right corner. If I hit that arrow, this actually will allow me to send this problem out to all of the student Chromebooks in my class so that they can respond to the problem. And then what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to get feedback from the students based off their answers of whether or not they knew this answer or not. I can get a pie chart it'll give me, where you have here, it says chart overview. It can have side by side or chart only. I can save the results. I can choose to do this anonymously, or I can have students' names come up here, allow participants to change the answer, and so forth. But basically, everybody in my class is going to respond to this problem, and I'm going to know like that whether they got the answer correct or they didn't get that answer correct. And that's all done by simply clicking that little square all the way over to the right-hand side. So when I'm ready to delete that, I can just click the problem, and I drag it, as I do with most of my items, right down to the trash can in the bottom right corner. And now it's off the screen. And you can see that all of the math symbols are here. I have exponents, I have cubed, I have squared, I have percentages. I also can make this larger. If I click in the bottom right corner here, you can see I can make that toolbar larger, and I can make it smaller. So those are 2 really neat tools if I want to get some real quick formative data on whether or not students understood my lesson. And I dragged the squared symbol, so it made the 5 into a 5 squared. And then I can drag over the equal sign, and there's the response. I can either click the question mark, which puts a 25 up there, or if I wanted to send this out to students, I click that with a right arrow going up into the top right corner, and I can send this out to all the students' Chromebooks and get immediate feedback. So that is a quick overview of the numbers and the symbols tools. Those are the top 2 tools on the math numbers toolbar here. The next one I have is called the function machine. The function machine allows me to create an equation. I can use the up and down arrows here. Let's say I want to give a problem 6 question mark 3 equals 2. Again, if I want to, I can hit that square with the arrow and send this out to the students to get real quick formative data. Or I can just, actually that says 8, let me get that back down to 6. Or I can just simply facilitate the conversation with students and say 6 something 3 equals 2. What could that sign be? And then we can talk about whether or not it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. I can put the division sign up there. So that's called the function machine. It allows me to play around with different equations, and I can leave any of those variables or constants empty and use it as a quick formative assessment. The next tool under the numbers section of the math toolbar is something that will allow me to do some number grids. So I can do a 10 grid to talk to students about 1 through 10 in rows of 5. I can do 1 to 50. I can do my hundreds chart. And again, in the bottom right corner, I can drag it. I can make it as big as I want. Place value, which we could talk about thousands, hundreds, tens, ones, tenths, hundredths, thousands, and so on. We can do the multiples chart. We can do just odd numbers. We can even do prime numbers. So here's a list of all of the first 100 prime numbers. And I can take any of these numbers and I can click on it and I can actually drag it off onto my workspace on my desktop if I wanted to work with it there. And once I want to get rid of it, I just drag it to my trash can. And I can create my own grid as well. Number of rows, start at, number of columns, and what increment do I want it to go by. And I can even hide numbers. If I want to hide numbers, if I want to create a hundreds chart, and let's say I want to hide all the even numbers or all the multiples of 6, I can choose to hide those numbers, and then I can work with the students on figuring out those multiples and what numbers are missing. The next option here is our number line. So you can have different number lines, negative 10 to 10, all the way from 0 to 1,000, and this allows me to create my own number line as well. And same thing, I can move these numbers out if I wanted to use them on my workspace. So if I wanted to say, how far is it from negative 5 to negative 3? And then what I'm going to do, just because it's the quickest way, I'm going to bring up my red pen. I'm going to say 1, 2. Right? Of course, I could also use the pencil tool that's on the standard toolbar. I always go to these tools because no matter where you are, remember in one of those other videos, we said it's the easiest to get to the pen tool there. But this gives you a lot of flexibility using a number line. So let me X out of that, and again, I'm going to drag these over to the trash can. After the number line, I'm not going to go over this too much. It's a standard calculator. You can use this however you see fit. This one's pretty cool. This one's a fractions option here. What allows me to do is I have all my 1 numerators here. If I drag them to this area, it will create a pie chart. If I create it over to this area here, it's going to create a fraction bar. So let me show you what that means. Let's say I want to compare 1/4 and 1/8. I take my fractions and I drag them over to the pie chart area, and I can make those a little bit larger so kids can see. And I can talk to the students about what they notice when I have 1/4 versus 1/8. Start talking to them about what the denominator means when I'm using pie charts. I said that was one option. The other option is to drag it over onto this side, which is my fraction bar. So if I drag 1/6 over to the fraction bar area, it actually creates a 1/6 fraction bar. And now let's say I want to compare 1/6 to 2/12. Over here I can create my own fraction. I'm going to do, the numerator is going to be 2, and the denominator is 12, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it over to the fraction bar, and that then creates 2/12 for me, which I can then enlarge, and I can guide that conversation with students to say 2/12 is comparable, it's an equivalent fraction to 1/6. This I find to be a very useful tool because that allows me then not to have to draw all these number charts, the fraction bars, and certainly not circles with a bunch of pie shapes in them. So I can create whole numbers, gives me a lot of flexibility there. The last tool I'm going to show you on this first section of the math tools in MyndShare, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but it is the abacus. And let me see if I can make this one a little bit larger so you can see it. I can't. It does have the option to do that. But I can slide these over. And basically what I have here is the thousands are on the bottom. I wanted to make that larger so you could see it, but I don't know why it's not getting larger. Thousands are on the bottom. You've got your hundreds in the middle. You've got your tens, and then you've got your ones. But I don't know if anybody out there still is using abacuses, but it's there if you need to use it. So that is the first section of the math toolbar in your MyndShare application.